So, for those in the audience, the viewers who don't know who you are, why don't you give a little bit of an introduction, your background, how you got started?
Sure. And apologies for my mic. I don't have my proper setup here yet. My name's Christopher Lee. I am known as a SEAL by the people in the League of Legends community, and I'm currently the head coach of Vivo Keyd. Before this team, I worked in Europe, Oceania, and North America. I worked for some names that people might be aware of here, like Team Heretics, Rogue. I worked for Team Vitality in the Academy program, and then I also worked briefly in the now defunct Golden Guardians Academy. So those are the kind of like well-known teams, and then in Oceania, I worked for the Chiefs Esports Club. So pretty storied history, but yeah, I mean, I guess yeah, nothing really special. Yeah, thanks for having me on, I guess.
And also, I mean, well, how did you start? Before you were in league, you were in a completely different field, right?
Yeah, so I was just a student that was majoring in economics and finance, double major in economics and finance. I interned for a company in Wall Street called sprinklebit.com. I don't think they're still, I mean, I think they're still around, but didn't really gain the traction that they hoped they would, where I was working under the marketing division and learning a little bit about risk management. And yeah, I guess that's about it. I mean, I did study 2 years of law as well,
Mhm.
but I really didn't enjoy it. So that was a
Yeah.
long time ago.
Do you think a lot of that experience though is translated into things that you do now?
Yeah, I think what helped me the most was not necessarily my work experience, but just the field of economics in general, because it really helps you think in a very analytical way,
Mhm.
in a structured way. I mean, economics is considered a science, so you're really taking that scientific structured approach to everything that you do, and then when I started to pick up coaching, or like just when I started to pick up the kind of structure on how the esports ecosystem functions, I was a lot faster than other people because of my background. So I do think it helped a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of people with diverse backgrounds being able to apply them in esports, right? There's been a lot of recent discussion about esports universities, esports degrees, and I think it's sort of detrimental actually to the scene to be hyper niche when you could have people coming in who love esports, who are passionate about it, but also draw from diverse backgrounds in other areas. You know, like myself, I have my doctorate in physical therapy. You would think, how does that even relate to gamers? But when it comes to conversations we've had about how do you teach people, right? How do you acquire skills? How do you train something that you're not good at? That stuff is universal, and it doesn't really matter, the specific realm of physical sports versus gaming. Human skill acquisition is generally the same in terms of how our brain functions. So, yeah, I really like hearing about people's backgrounds before they got into the pro esports side. What are some major things that you've noticed though, going from obviously LEC, you got these massive teams in Europe, working with a championship roster, and now you're almost starting fresh, in a minor region with a new team. Don't know anybody. How's that transition been?
I mean, to be completely honest with you, first of all, I don't think anyone in esports really knows what they're doing.
I agree. I agree.
That's the honest truth. The difference between Europe and Brazil, first and foremost, is the ecosystem and the economic capabilities of the region. So, for example, the stability of the internet connection across the countries. In Europe, it's countries, right? The economic stability of its player base, so the ability to play League of Legends at all.
Mhm.
Is, for example, the average gamer in Brazil spends maximum $160 a year on video games. That's a well-known study. So in total, so like a lot of them can't afford to play on PCs,
Hmm.
and then the average skill of the player base is going to reflect that, right? So to be completely honest with you, there's no real difference between me being on a championship team, I still don't really know what I'm doing compared to the people in traditional sports, in a lot more expertise industries. Um, and at Rogue, we were very, very far off from being, something immaculate like people pointed out to be, right?
Mhm.
The primary advantage we had was, as I said, the environment in which we're a lot more economically stable, we have a lot more resources, and the players in general are better because the player base is more competitive due to being able to practice and play without having to worry about, flooding your home while you're playing League of Legends, or,
Yeah.
you know, things like this that don't happen in Germany,
Yeah. Does Brazil have a sort of a PC bong type culture too, or do they mostly just play at home?
They did, but they all died.
I see.
The internet cafe culture here used to be a big thing,
Yeah.
and all the land houses died here,
Hmm.
purely because of the economic viability. The average, basically $1 is like, it's 1 to 5 here. So $1 is 5 real.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of see the economy being like that kind of scale,
Hmm.
in general.
Yeah.
And the minimum wage here is $300.
Wow.
So yeah, so there's a very big income disparity.
Hmm.
Not to talk about politics or economics too much, but that's what makes it very hard for internet cafes to function profitably,
Yeah.
and that's what makes it hard for, even though they have 1.5 million players in Brazil,
Wow.
um, for the connections to be secure and for the PCs to operate smoothly, to have a good high level experience,
Now, yeah, it's almost interesting. It's interesting because when you first said, okay, they only spend $160 a year on gaming, I would think, well, as long as you had access to a PC, League is a perfect game then. I mean, you literally do not have to spend money on the game, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of this paradox of like, well, if there was some sort of investment in the space, you could actually probably get a lot of players playing a game that they don't have to pay for.
Well, actually, that's the trap as well. Technology in Brazil is really, really expensive.
Mm.
It's a little off topic from esports, but basically they have a thing called like a luxury tax.
Ah, okay.
So, for example, when I bought this iPhone 15 Pro, right, Pro Max or whatever, it was around 1,400 euros, $1,500. In Brazil, it would cost over $2,000,
Wow.
even despite the difference in income, like difference in
Mm.
currency, it would cost even more. And this is primarily for technology and luxury goods. Well, they consider PCs luxury goods. So
Mm-hmm.
the investment that you have to make in order to buy PCs in Brazil is actually really, really, really high.
Hmm.
And therefore, it's very hard to justify operating LAN houses. That's one of the kind of difficulties, really.
Yeah.
So it's a bit unique. Yeah.
Hmm.
So what they
That's
they actually they consider, sorry, they consider iPhones to be an investment. Yeah. Like they consider iPhones to be like an investment so that you can operate. And most people use or reuse older iPhones and resell them.
that's interesting that they consider it an iPhone but not a PC, like something
Yeah.
that you would use for a business.
So
But yeah,
mobile games actually function like very actively here. Like it's very
that makes
popular
sense.
here.
That makes sense. That's
More
that's
more
really
than PC
interesting.
games.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, and then in that note, then it's actually fascinating. It's amazing that Brazil has done fairly, like, CBLoL has done fairly well internationally, in terms of like what you'd expect, right? I see them taking games off tier one, major region teams and play-ins. Was it Loud? They've had games where they look competitive, and even games where they lost. Right, they lost to a few LCS teams like over the last few years. But in those games, I was actually genuinely worried at times. I was like, man, they're like team fighting is better than ours. It looks like at points. Um, it's fascinating that with that small of a, I mean, relatively small of a player base available, that they still have this many players. They can still make competitive teams. What do you think contributes to that? How's the SoloQ environment there, having been exposed to NA SoloQ, European SoloQ, probably Korean SoloQ as well?
Yeah, it's pretty terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Brazilian SoloQ is very, very, very bad. Doesn't resemble competitive League of Legends at all.
Hmm.
It's another sad topic, really. And I don't really want to just talk bad about Brazil because I love the country, I love its people, I love the ecosystem here. I'm enjoying my time here, but The sad truth is the teams that operate semi-successfully or semi-competitively in the recent years pay their players in dollars. Their coaches are generally Korean.
Mhm.
For example, Loud have a Korean jungler, Croc.
Mhm.
They have a Korean AD carry from the LCK, Root. And they have the absolute pika best top laner, mid laner, and or previously support SeeEl's in the whole region, undisputedly. And they
Mhm.
pay them very, very good salaries in
Mhm.
dollars.
Mhm.
So when you say they're competitive, when you have a very, very strong roster with exceptions in each region for each role, you should expect there to be some level of performance in the international stage.
Sure.
That being said, I still think the gap between the LCS and CBLoL is quite large, unfortunately, primarily because America just buys even better talents.
Right.
So if the if the Brazilians buy like No Flame, tier 2 players,
Mhm.
tier 2 Korean players that aren't good enough to play in LCK, got pushed out from other talent,
Right.
then North America pays 10 times the salary that Brazil does and brings current LCK players, right?
Right. Right.
So obviously there's no real competition there, which is a really, really sad state for both regions actually. Um, and then a lot of Brazilians talk about the EDG games. They talk about the games where they take games off NA, but best of ones, there's always going to be a lot of variance.
Sure.
Whereas if you look at the history of CBLOL, they haven't made it out of the groups once. So they haven't made it to quarters once. They haven't even made it out of groups once, which is very, very sad. Because I do think that some of these players are actually quite genuinely quite good.
Well, there was some of the players have gone to other regions too, right? And made it onto at least academy level teams or like some of the bottom tier like LCS teams even. I think
Jukes?
I'm trying to remember. Jukes, well, he was a streamer and then C9 did sign him to the academy team and he did play for a little bit, but I don't know if it was I don't know if that was more of a publicity thing or because he didn't play very long. It was like one split. Trying to think who else. There was
I mean,
a
I do think that like
oh
Robbo,
yeah. There was
right?
an ADC. Oh, I gotta pull up the roster now. LCS, I believe. This split. He's actually Korean, but he played in CBLoL.
Oh, B-boy.
B-boy.
Thing is, he played in LPL and stuff, so
Yeah.
it
Okay.
doesn't really count.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I mean, I do think that some Brazilians can definitely play at that level, like the LCS level.
Hmm.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you had to choose the top of Brazil and the top of North America and the top of Europe, it's very hard for Brazil to be competitive.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
for
Well, if
example,
you're looking
I could
internationally,
easily,
yeah, because it's the best team of every region. So
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I could easily see, Robbo, Cios, Tinones, Gigo, these players playing in LEC, LCS. It's
Yes.
just I don't ever see them playing in G2. It's not possible.
No. Right.
I
Right. That
don't see
makes
them
sense.
playing in
Well,
C9.
like
It's not possible.
Malrong, right? He's in Kaboom now.
Yeah, but he could go to LCS if he wanted.
He could. Yeah. So there's definitely
Yeah, I mean,
talent
he
there.
had
Yeah.
offers. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, I guess it's not it's again we're not knocking Brazil. It's just interesting to compare. Obviously, as a minor region, you don't expect to have the same level of support structure and all that infrastructure and all that as a major region. But it's interesting that they're sort of the same issue, right? With LCS and CBLOL, where the top teams in LCS were historically the ones spending the most, and you sort of had this bottom 4 or 5 that were never really in contention for playoffs. I think this is the first split where we've seen this much parity in the LCS ever since I've started watching. I think all the teams are within 2 games of each other, which is ridiculous. This has never really been the case at this point in the split. And I wonder. I mean, I think there's some issues of well, maybe it's a new this season. I expected more volatility because of the map changes and all this stuff. There was no preseason, so all the teams started at the same level. Do you think that in from learning like what LCS is doing, like we're looking at LCS right now, is there some relative parity going on in Brazil right now in the league, or is it still sort of that same top three, bottom 5 type split?
I think it's top three, bottom five.
Yeah.
Kate is somewhere in the middle.
Hmm.
I think Loud, Kaboom, Red, and Pain are looking very strong.
Hmm. So
And then
how,
Kaboom is
well,
sorry.
as a head coach, I guess, how are you going to change that? Given
I
that
mean,
you
I think
probably can't just buy new players. So,
no, I mean, I think we can beat them. It's just all about the process and developing the team.
mhm.
I think the one advantage Brazil has, which is the reason I came here, and I think it's 10 times better than North America, is that Brazil focused on catering to its local audience, primarily because of the nature of the Brazilian market. So, for example, Uber Eats used to be a thing in Brazil, and it just failed. Like iFood took over, and like Brazil is one of the only countries where, for example, the major streaming platform is not like Netflix or Apple TV or anything. It's like something else. I forgot the name of it.
Huh.
So like, so what Brazil did in order to adapt to the Brazilian market was they appealed to the Brazilian audience and the Brazilian audience only in terms of the way that it's broadcasted. For example, I think CBLoL is the only or one of the only broadcasts with sign language,
Hmm.
and it's heavily inclusive. The
Yeah.
sport itself, the esport itself, is heavily inclusive. Um, Whereas in North America, well, strategically they made some, I think, very very big like poor decisions early on in its infancy. For example, the majority of the U.S. population is in its East Coast,
Yeah.
right? I think 70% or so, and the operating costs uh, of running a team in California is exorbitantly expensive because it's
Hmm.
the most expensive state in the United States.
Hmm.
As far as I'm concerned. Maybe there is some other city, but it's
No, no,
close.
I think
It's close.
state-wise, yeah, you're
Maybe
you're correct.
yeah.
Yeah, state-wise, you're correct.
And then city wise, it'd probably be New York City. But
Yeah.
other than that, it's like pretty ridiculous. So basically, what happened was there was a huge influx of venture capital, and they were like, okay, I have $300 million in my bank account, and Riot used to be based in California, and this is like the tech hub. So let's just start it off here, right? They alienated a lot of the East Coast audience. They structured their broadcast to be more international and to focus less on the US audience.
Hmm.
And so the viewership died, the talent pipeline died, and they just resorted to buying talent. Whereas in Brazil, there is like the cost of an academy player and the cost of operations compared to the US is so low. It's so low. It's probably not even 10 to 1.
Yeah.
Um, like one spot in CBLoL is like $2 million.
Wow.
That's my understanding. Or it used to be. I don't
Yeah.
know if it's inflated now, right?
Yeah.
So,
Which makes sense. Well, for
um,
context, an LCS spot was over 10 million, and that's cheap.
yeah, but it used to be 20.
You're right. That's
It
what I
used
mean.
to
They
be 20,
sold they
25
sold it at a discount for
at a
sure. Like,
loss. Yeah,
yeah,
because they needed to get out, right? They
yeah,
had no
yeah,
money because of the FTX thing. So,
yeah.
um, yeah, I think the main difference for me would be that for me, I actually think that Brazil is a little bit more competitive in that area,
Mhm.
and there is a bit of parity between top teams and bottom teams. But in terms of like its sustainability and which team is at the top, just depends on the year. For example, this year Kaboom decided to invest a lot of money.
Mm.
Last year they didn't decide to do, right? So it's actually not the same teams every time as well, which is very, very different.
Yeah. Are Brazilian teams sort of like the LCS teams of old, where it's a lot of individual owners or investors that are
Yeah.
in it? Okay. And so it's
Like a
more.
lot of the people that a lot of the people that own it are like rich billionaires and stuff like
Gotcha,
this.
gotcha.
I think
Um,
the paying gaming is the biggest org
yeah,
in Brazil
yeah.
is Pain Gaming is and then after that I think it's Loud in terms of fan base
Okay,
is owned by a billionaire and the owner has a tiger.
okay.
Like that's the kind of region that's the kind of region Brazil is,
Yeah,
you know.
don't
Like
screw
he has
around
like
on that
three
team. You get
tigers.
fed to the tiger, like.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome. So what I like to see now too is in Europe, at least in LEC, we're starting to maybe sort of see it in LCS, but in LEC is the streamer owned teams. I think that's a
yeah,
huge area that sort of isn't been tapped yet when it definitely could be. Like in LCS, we're seeing Disguised at the amateur level starting to make some noise, and it's cool because now you have automatic brand relevance, whereas formerly a lot of LCS teams doesn't like you know Golden Guardians didn't have any fans until they won. They were in the finals that split, so they started winning, and all of a sudden their media team got better also. And then a year later they vanished. So
yeah.
I've always said the org-driven branding is never going to be as successful as let's say a streamer that already has 10 million fans. I mean, it's like you can bring that audience with you and start bringing that fan base into the league. I think it's really really powerful. Um,
Not to be pessimistic,
mhm.
but the reality of esports is that esports is really tiny.
Mm-hmm.
It is minuscule.
Mm-hmm.
And out of the 80 viewers here, there's probably no owners, like business people, like watching at the moment. But like in their stead, I'll kind of explain the ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, the esports ecosystem financially is impossible to sustain in its current state.
Yes.
And the reason is that it's driven by venture capital. Salaries are inflated. First and foremost, operating costs are ginormous, especially in the West, right? Especially in the LCS.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important thing is the average viewership of the LCS and league in general, even at Worlds and whatnot, is a fraction of traditional sports.
Yes.
So people don't actually realize this because they hear the big numbers. They hear 3, 4, 5, 10 million viewers, 150 million players. Compared to traditional sports and how much money these sports companies bring, it is significantly less, especially since League of Legends as an esport cannot ever truly be a sport. And the reason for that is because the game is owned by a game developer.
Right.
So at the top of the chain, it is owned by Riot Games, right? So in football, I think every other aspect of the competition is very similar to sports, or if not, it's the same. But it can never truly be a sport because who owns football? No one owns football. No one owns basketball.
There
No one
are,
actually owns it.
well,
There's the NFL.
yeah. There are leagues, right, that basically
Yeah,
determine the professional scene and they set all the
yeah.
rules. But I see what you mean. Like you could
But
play with whoever you want. You
but the
could,
NFL can't one day just be like, okay, we're monetizing 30% from every team. They can't do that.
you
It
mean
doesn't work like
you mean every team in the
like if
NFL.
yeah. So if Riot said, for example, so say the NFL went to their owners, right? Or let's just say the NBA, because I don't know too much about American football. But let's just say the NBA goes to the Bulls, the Boston, Celtic, the
Celtics, yeah. Yeah.
Celtics, Boston
Yeah.
Celtics, or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
and they're like, okay, guys, you can't sell anything anymore. You can't sell seats to your stadium. We own everything, and you can get a little bit of money from us, 10% of our revenue. They can't do that, but in
Right.
Riot they do. They do exactly that.
Now,
There is no form of revenue for the
yeah.
teams,
Well, yeah,
right?
yeah. The problem has always been the revenue stream. There's
Yes,
no established model for revenue generation in esports that's made sense yet, especially given that you're like, okay, well, the viewership is so little. It's even worse when you think we don't monetize our viewership at all. There is
yeah.
zero
So
monetization of viewership in esports.
exactly. So the thing is, the game is owned by a game developer that sets rules. For example,
Mm-hmm.
no gambling sponsors, no drinking sponsors. Now they've decided to change it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now they're allowing gambling sponsors. Now they're starting to allow people
Yeah.
to get alcohol sponsors, right? In the NFL, they can't do that.
Not
And
yet.
then
It's been proposed and it will be changing
yeah,
soon. I think they did vote to allow gambling now.
yeah, that's the thing. It's like
Yeah.
they need to vote with the owners and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Riot just chooses. That's it. That's the word, right?
Yeah.
And then each team has its revenue source by selling tickets to the stadium or renting out their stadium and having
Right.
real estate. Esports doesn't have that, right? So it's a wildly different ecosystem. And what makes Brazil profitable is the viewership goes up year by year. The actual broadcast is tailored more towards the Brazilian local audience. And in America, it's not like that at all.
Right.
So all these teams are just bleeding money. And it becomes really difficult for the LCS to like maintain what they want to do.
No, you
I
said
think
Brazil is profitable.
a lot of teams, no, they're bleeding money, but like
Not at the same rate.
some teams are profitable. Yeah,
Interesting.
my
Okay.
understanding.
So what makes them profitable? Just the
Or
eyeballs?
close to profitable, or close to profitable.
I
I mean,
like selling merch. Is it?
yeah, no, they just monetize sponsors better. But in the end, as I said, the whole ecosystem is way harder to maintain than traditional sports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what gives Brazil an edge is okay, even if they lose money, if they have foreign investment, the dollars they lose in Brazil compared to North America is like significantly less.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
That makes sense. Hmm.
yeah.
I guess from that perspective, then, like, what do you do as a coach? Like, if you say, okay, esports as a whole is struggling, and obviously we saw with the recession, a lot of those free dollars dried up. All these different orgs had to figure out new ways of monetizing what they do have, try to find some means of sustainability. Um, what do you do? Do you think winning solves anything, or do you think like you just have to try to survive as much as you can? Like you're
Yeah, I
someone
mean that
operating in the scene, you're not directing it, but
yeah, I kind of went off tangent for
yeah,
some reason. I don't know why. I think I'm just thinking about a couple things at once at the moment. Just a lot on my plate.
sure,
But
yeah,
you're talking about disguise
yeah,
and the streamer economy. I think this is just a natural movement towards making the market more free and sustainable for its users. Because I think Riot has started to realize that it's not possible to just maintain the broadcasts with its own dollars through selling skins and
hmm.
maintain this kind of level, right? Especially when the economy is bad and there's no venture capital money. So in relation to that, when you say, hey, how do we fix that revenue stream? Do you just win? One, I think you need to have a talent development pipeline. You need to make salaries more. Uh, I think you need to make salaries more sustainable
Hmm.
through internal systems. But second, you just need to be better at marketing, right? So teams just need to know how to monetize their platform better. So, for example, at Keyd, our team sold the most jerseys in the history of the organization
Hmm.
in January, right? And I'm a random, they call me Gringo, and I'm a random alien that had no social media. I was very minimal in social media when I was in Europe. I tried to do some things, but nothing crazy. I came up with a social media strategy, and in 3 months, everyone and their grandmother is cheering for Keyd. So I think something that teams need to do is they need to know how to monetize their business platform better, how to make games more exciting, how to create exciting personalities, because that's what made the LCS exciting in day one. For example,
Hmm.
having Dyrus, the odd one, this roster with TSM, Baylife, people wanted to go and be bought, or people were captivated by the idea of just five guys being in a house, you know, being in a
Yeah,
mansion and just playing games together and going to Costco and shit talking and just being idiots. People were captivated by this idea and they were captivated by the personalities and they were sold and they felt connected to these personalities. That's why they're still around, right?
yeah,
But in in LCS, what is it now? It's just all horseshit. No offense. And I look at it and I'm half asleep. And everyone is so scared of posting anything because they get cancelled. So to be honest, like what I do is a bit risky, but I think players and teams need to be a lot smarter about, as I said, monetizing their platform and creating a narrative, not just relying on Riot to do that.
yeah. And I've said for a long time, every time I talk to academy players, up and coming amateur players, you need to start building your brand before you get signed. And a lot of times you'll get signed easier if you have a brand. Like put content out, put clips up, stream. Now LCS is, well, not LCS, but individual orgs in LCS are mandating that their players stream every day. You're starting to see a lot more of that, right? Like we've seen a bunch of
Yeah,
pros now who are actually putting themselves out there more. They're talking more trash online. They're really trying to build their own individual brands, which as a whole builds the team's brand.
I think there are a few things that teams need to do. It's not just winning, as I said. It's about building the pipeline. It's
Yeah,
about making the narrative more exciting, like building up their like utilizing their business and leveraging their business in a smarter way by creating these storylines, right?
yeah,
But one thing I didn't mention is diversification. So streaming is one. For example, back in the day, 2013, 14, when it was more sustainable, still unsustainable, but more sustainable. A lot of the player salaries came from streaming. So people had to
mm,
stream in order to make money, right? Nowadays, a lot of the salaries just come from the organization. But having that stream and growing that brand made the org more valuable as well.
right.
And other things they can do is like diversify their portfolio. So that's something that Kate is doing as well. They're diversifying their portfolio and they're tying in with my company as the company that I'm building, right? You're a part of it, like
Parable,
at
yeah,
the yeah, exactly. Finding alternative solutions to generate cash flow. Um, and using instead of sitting on $200 million cash,
Right.
which seems pretty dumb. It's not
Well,
200 million. It's
I
probably
mean,
close to 50 million.
we've seen how LCS orgs can burn through 200 million in record time and get nothing from it. You know, you build a $150 million facility to take pictures in, and then what? Like, there's no return on that.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, you talked about how, oh, Chris, you were in a championship team. How's it different from Brazil? Like, the truth is, like, nobody fucking knows what they're doing. The CEOs of the majority of these companies, no flame, are incredibly underqualified or do not understand the space at all because it's very young. And instead of taking a conservative approach, they've just decided to just dump a bunch of money into a grease fire and hoped it worked out the best. That's essentially what happened in the esports market. So nothing is different. It's just everyone doesn't know what they're doing still. People are starting to figure it out. And one of the most profitable and natural ways for these companies to be profitable is through a creator-driven economy. So, for example, Kameto with KCorp. And
I was gonna ask about them next. Yeah.
yeah, with Disguise, but I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure Disguise is also burning through a metric shit ton of money.
Yeah, so Disguised Toast published his financial records for that team as of last year, and he went through $1 million of his own money.
Yeah, but if you went through $1 million of his
Yeah.
own money, like it just exemplifies for me someone that doesn't know what they're doing.
Well, because he was paying all of it up front. Now they've launched a merch line. They're doing all the stuff to recoup a lot of it. His content's been really, really good. They ended up winning the Academy
So
split, right?
that okay. Like as I said, I'm not friends with Disguised,
Yeah, yeah.
and but to be open with you, and I can say this because obviously I don't have connection to the guy, but like let's just say he was a responsible business owner with a good business plan, right? Instead of a guy that just wanted an esports team. Don't you think he should have designed the merch first?
Sure. Yeah.
Or like or have some sort of business plan in order to like reduce his burn rate? That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Yeah. True.
Like,
True.
and by the way, I'm so stupid. Like in university, I was like the dumbest kid in school, right? And one of the reasons I went into esports is because I realized I was dumb. And someone with like an IQ of like 85, right? Not literally. I don't know what my IQ is, but you get the point. 85
I think it's
can
higher than
just look
that,
at
but
a
yeah.
business, can look at a business and be like, okay, if I'm starting a business, I'm gonna have a business plan. I'm gonna understand the demographic that I'm going into. I'm gonna understand my burn rate, my cash rate, the cash rate of the current economy, the state of the economy, my strategy relative to that, and I'm gonna leverage my brand in this way. That's what I would have done. And
Sure.
now he's like, oh, let's try to recoup some of the money. I mean, that is getting a bunch of money and throwing into a grease fire.
Yeah.
And what essentially happened was we got people that were way more underqualified than Disguise because what he's built was a really exciting platform and a brand that's profitable, right? That's something that he's done really well,
Yeah.
right? So you got someone like Reginald who didn't have the brand, right? And maybe he's brilliant, right? But this is in 2013, 14, remember this. So he didn't know shit. And we gave him $50 million, $100 million. Seems not very smart.
Yeah. Well, you look at TSM as a whole, right? When you look at the entirety of TSM's existence, and it was kind of like they exploded in popularity, and ever since it was just been this like very steady decline.
Yeah.
And everything that TSM fans want, they just didn't do. Everything they did, the fans didn't like. It was like it was almost impossible how bad they did with so many things.
For me,
Yeah.
the moment I see a esports owner get on a private jet, my alarm bells run.
Yeah.
Because they're getting on a private jet and they're building 10, 20, $30 million facilities and the company's losing money.
Yeah.
If my company loses like $1,000 a month, I'm like losing sleep trying to make this profitable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's a discussion I
Something's
had.
wrong.
Someone brought up C9. Yeah, I talked to so when I started working with C9 in 2018, one of the things I asked, because that was when the boom happened where everybody was buying houses or facilities, right? And I talked to Jack and I was like, are you guys going to get a facility? He's like, well, we're looking, but this sort of works. We don't really need a facility. We own these houses, you know.
Yeah,
We
it's
don't
real
pay.
estate.
We don't pay anything. We just basically live here, and why would we justify spending $20 million on building a facility or something like that what do we get out of
Yeah.
it? You just put everyone in the same place. That's it. You get some content out of it, I guess. But it's
I,
sort of like this
I,
flex. It doesn't make any sense.
exactly. I worked with one of the investors at C9. I
Mm-hmm.
coached him a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
We're not really in contact anymore, but Jack is one of those smart owners, and I've never spoken to Jack either, but Jack, this is my understanding from the conversations and what I've seen throughout the years. Jack is one of the smart owners where he probably has, 60, 40 to 60, maybe up to $80 million of his own money stuck in C9 because of equity,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if his company's losing money or he's burning through the cash flow, right? He's going to lose sleep over that.
That's his money. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Until he can exit, right?
Mm-hmm.
'Cause it's not his money yet. He
Yeah.
probably takes his salary. I don't know the details.
Right.
Probably sold a little bit of equity, but the majority of his net worth is stuck in the company, right? And I think he was mature and smart enough ever since the days at TSM when he worked with TSM, I believe,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
that he knows that he needs to create a sustainable ecosystem.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the other owners were a bit dumber. They just thought that this money was theirs now, right?
Yeah. I mean,
So yeah, I think what they did there was smart.
yeah, and Jack did announce as of this year, C9 is actually profitable this year. So
Yeah, that's crazy.
a lot of the cuts that they made, they cut almost every roster, they cut almost every streamer. They kept focus on the games that they have profitability in, which is League, CS:GO, and Valorant, and that was it. They cut everyone else.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what they should do.
Yeah, I think more orgs are starting to realize that too, and they're starting to do that.
I
But
think that's one thing that I'm really curious about. If I ever got a chance to work with C9, I think we would have gotten along very well.
yeah, I really
Yeah.
enjoyed my time with them for sure. It was
Yeah.
good 5 years. But what speaking of KCorp though, to go back to that, what do you think about KCorp right now? Like the whole coach firing after one split. Like, what, as a coach yourself, what were your thoughts on that?
Well, I think if they hire a coach, they should help him follow through with the processes. I think that it was a combination of a bad culture fit and a bad coach for the team. That's my guess. That would be my guess from an outside perspective, which means hiring Yamato in the first place was probably the mistake.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, if they did hire him, I think firing him in one split is really, really silly.
Yeah.
I think they should help him. Yeah, but who knows what goes on behind the scenes?
Right.
You never know. You never know. Like coaching is one of those things where it's like really rare to know what the coach is actually doing. Like for example, even with us, we have like a 45-minute documentary every month, every week, and the camera crews follow us all the time. And even then, they're cutting up. Well, I am, and my assistant coach is cutting out probably 85% of what we do, maybe more.
For
More, probably like
like
95%.
for
Yeah.
confidentiality reasons, or just to...
Well, that too, but also like for me, it's a balance, right? If there's too much coaching, then player brand value goes down. This kind of stuff as well. So like, we're thinking about a lot of things when we're cutting, and so yeah, you never know with Yamato. It definitely looks really terrible for the organization. I do have to say.
Yeah.
It looks really, really, really terrible for the organization. But what can you do? What can you do?
Right. I mean, again, yeah, I have no insider information on that either. But looking from the outside, it's he released that statement. Seemed like there wasn't drama between them. They both seemed amicable. But yeah, who knows? There could have been a specific interaction that he had with the player that basically caused them to decide he's not the guy. There's a million things it could be, but yeah, it looks really bad because you basically brought in a coach who showed some promise. Right, the team started playing better by the end of the split. And then cut him after one season. That now the next coach is gonna hopefully have 2 splits to get them to Worlds, but I don't know. They didn't look good playing this weekend.
What I will say is this: a lot of the time these decisions are from players.
Yeah, sure. And that's something also I mean, I think we've talked about this, but I really, really never understood a player-driven system at the professional level. Right? You don't see that in any other professional sport.
Crazy, yeah.
Yeah, you cannot have players run the organization.
I mean, from a sports psychology perspective, it's not possible as well.
Yeah.
Because like players cannot, like you need to maintain equilibrium between players, and you need to think about power dynamics, and you need to think about so many things.
Mhm.
But the sad fact is, and this is a sad reality from my experience as well, coaches just don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, like, they're more of a hindrance than a help. That's what led to this kind of system. I think that everything happens for a reason. Like, most things happen for a reason. They're a result of something else, right? And there's nothing that like Riot did in order to impact the kind of coaching structure within teams. Like, the ecosystem, the economy, not allowing co-streaming for so many years, like so many things, so many, let's just say, bad decisions that Riot did, despite being a Riot supporter. You can see the consequences. But in terms of actual team structure, there's nothing that Riot did, but all the teams shifted towards like a player-driven system, like all the majority of them for the last years, right? And I think this happens for a reason. It's because most of the coaches either just lack the game knowledge, or they're ex-players that aren't good enough to play anymore, and they want a power trip, you know.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of like rotten water from previous generations just being carried throughout the splits.
Yeah, and this is something I've talked a lot online about is the difference between a head coach being a strategic coach and being a coach that actually organizes the team. Like, that's a huge part of
Yeah,
your role is ensuring that there's good interpersonal relationships being developed, not
yeah,
just, oh, I'm going to tell you what champ to play, right? So
yeah.
like,
I mean,
yeah,
the truth is, and I can say this openly now, like when I was at Rogue, especially in spring, my title was assistant coach, but I was not assistant coach in that team, right? I was being paid as assistant coach. My role was under Freddie, but the things that I was doing, strategizing, building systems, interpersonal skills, like, it's just not how it is in football. It's just very different.
mm-hmm.
And so when you initially talked about in this interview at the very start, I don't really like the idea of like an esports university. I actually really welcome specialization, and I really welcome the development of expertise in the area. I think what it kind of reminds me of when I see, for example, I think LS tweeted about how you don't need an esports degree to be a good coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or something like that, something along the lines of that. I think that learning how to coach from an actual educational platform is an incredibly valuable and important milestone that esports will have to think about in the future. For me,
Yeah,
this is how I think about it.
yeah.
Um, Maybe not right now, and you don't see it right now, but that's just how every industry builds
I
itself
yeah.
from ground up.
I
And it's
guess
just,
I should clarify. It's not that I'm against continuing education to be more specific and more nuanced in your field, but rather, like, you probably shouldn't get a college degree in esports because it's
yeah,
not going to be applicable anywhere else.
yeah. I mean, at the moment, yeah, but I
Yeah,
can see the development of what they're doing right now, and 10 years down the line, being extremely valuable. For
yeah,
example, in football in Europe, do you know there's like a football coaching license? Are you
mhm.
aware of that?
Yeah, yeah.
There's a
Because it's
UEFA
big enough.
A, B,
Yeah,
C, D
it's
license.
a credentialing though, right? And I do think that's
No,
that.
no. You literally cannot be, for example, head coach of Arsenal
Right.
without UEFA license.
Right. Okay, but that makes sense, right? That's specific to the field. It's something that you take on specifically to do that job,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
not like, oh, you get this college degree in football coaching.
It is like that.
But
It's exactly that.
it's a bachelor's, or is it like an ongoing
It's a
continuing education?
certificate. It's a
Okay, so yeah,
certificate.
I think that's fine
It takes
because
10
yeah.
years.
So the
Yeah.
U.S. I mean, like a college degree is a college degree. We sort of had this, like, you get your bachelor's and it's this tier. It doesn't matter what it's in, which doesn't really make sense to me, right? You get a bachelor in the arts, but as long as you have a bachelor's, now certain companies will hire you, which is ridiculous. But I think continuing education to be nuanced is very important, because
Sure.
that's specific to what it is that you want to study and what you want to get better at. I was actually involved with 1HP. We developed a EPI course, which is Esports Health Providers Institute. Basically, not teaching people to be physical therapists, doctors, or any of that. That's the baseline. But teaching those professionals how to better treat esports professionals and players and gaming.
Yeah.
All right, because there's this nuanced specificity to
Actually,
that.
you're
Does that
probably
make
right.
sense?
Like a bachelor's in esports is probably troll.
Yeah,
But if it
exactly.
was like if it was a bachelor's in like
Business with esports
coach,
management. Yeah.
or yeah, or like coaching,
Right. Right.
like some sort of
Well, they
coaching
have,
certificate.
you can get a bachelor's in sports management, right?
Yeah,
Or sports
exactly.
psychology, and then you could have an esports
Exactly.
focus or something. That makes sense to me.
Exactly. That makes sense to me as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense actually. I agree with that one. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
think
I
so.
think right now people are just trying to monetize a space and they're trying to, sell
Yeah, that's
kids on a
pretty bad.
dream. It's like these random like, oh, learn how to be an animator type classes and you're like paying $30,000 for a 1 year thing. It's like, you don't need that. Or coding boot camps right now is a big one too in the US. Like teach you how to
Yeah.
code and you'll work for Amazon. You're like, no, you're not. You're competing against the best of the best. So
Yeah, exactly.
um, okay. Yeah, I definitely think coaching development is something I've been very vocal about over the last year or so because I do think that especially in North America there's a scarcity of it, right? Of good coaching. But I also understand that sometimes you get good coaches who don't get the opportunity. Like I know a ton of coaches who coached very successfully at the academy level but never got an LCS offer. Or,
Yeah.
the LCS team would rather just bring a coach from somewhere else in, like, a random Korean coach. And they come here for 2 years. They don't really speak the language. They don't work with any of the players well, and they leave. And
Yeah.
never understood that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree. I think that's pretty silly. I think it just came down to having a little bit too much money.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like to me.
Yeah. So I guess on
Uh,
the upside, now that we don't have all this free money, we're seeing a lot of paradigm shifts. A lot of teams, a lot of orgs are starting to look at things a little bit more out of the box and like, well, we can't just throw money at the problem. What are we gonna do, right? I guess specifically for you, what are some of the focuses that you have with the team this split?
I mean, what I do at Kate is like actually very, very varied. It's not just League of Legends coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually a 7-day a week job at the moment. Um, for one, for example, we're really process focused here. That's where I really connected with the owners. And turned down some very, 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 very generous offers to come here instead.
Mm-hmm.
For example, we have an esports methodology, 16 pages that I helped build. The owners are very, very big on this. So, for example, like how we operate, how teams should operate, how we should be coaching, like how much energy should be putting into training based on the season timings, like so many things, yeah. So yeah, like there's that. Then I'm in charge of obviously like the scouting. That's been really busy as well, like using data, using big data, using um like individual analysis. It's like a cycle analysis and like individual interviews that took a lot of time. So team building and like building the foundations of the team is very important. I also write things like a coaching guideline. For example, I work with the Honor of Kings line as well. I just coached their coach 3 hours ago.
Hmm.
Um, on like how to be a better coach and what the studies are showing and what I learned and why it's important to coach in a certain way and why it's important to talk in a certain way, why certain language is important. From the mistakes that I've made and from the learnings that I've had from the best performance coaches in the world, I
Mm-hmm.
really think some of the best in the world. And I got very lucky with the people that I met.
Sure.
Um, and then I obviously look after the academy. I train their coaches. I operate the CBLoL team and also do one-to-ones with every player, including the academy roster. So that's 10 players. So it's 10 players, 4 coaches, managers, the performance coaches, which is like 4 members.
Hmm.
We have a staff meeting every Tuesday. We align on how we approach each week and how we approach the year and each quarter. We have relevant OKRs and KPIs for every aspect of operations. And then there's obviously the strategic aspect. It's a lot of work. It really is a 7-day. I mean, at the
Man,
moment, it is a 7-day a week.
even hearing that though, you just described so much more of a detailed and nuanced system than almost anything I've heard at the LCS level.
Yeah, I mean,
Like
it's
that.
really it's really funny because like
Yeah, the vast majority of teams in the LCS are doing a fraction of that. They're mostly focused
yeah
on the strategic side, and that's it.
yeah. I mean, but the strategic side is very 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 extensive too.
It is, of course. No, I'm not saying that they're lazy. They're not doing work.
For
It's just that
example,
they're putting hundreds of hours into analyzing draft, analyzing the in-game stuff. That's it.
yeah
But
yeah. That's
yeah,
how it is for us too.
yeah.
But it just comes down to. I mean, I don't think it's normal what we do here. But it's like, how much do I want it, right? There's a lot of people that have their bellies full right now. That's what I'll say. And I'm still starving. So it is a 7-day a week, 16 to 19 hours a day job.
So when you say how bad do I want, like, what do you want? What is the
I
goal?
mean, I want to win everything over and over again, and then I want to build up the entire ecosystem, and I want to make a global team. So that is a obsession. I think you need to be obsessed to be the best.
I like it. I agree.
So that's a yeah. So that's a
Yeah.
that is, as I said, it's like a 7-day a week, 16 to 19 hour job. I sleep in the office, shit in the office, eat in the office. Um,
Yeah, you got the Kobe mindset. I mean, that's, I mean,
but
when I talked to you before, I mean, that's why I asked that though. Very specifically, what is your goal?
yeah,
This is something I do with my patients too. Like, what is your actual goal? Because when you
yeah.
ask a lot of LCS teams, a lot of LCS players, like, what is your goal? Like, oh, win worlds. Like, is that really your goal? Because if that was your goal, you wouldn't be operating in the manner that you are, right?
Well, I do want to win worlds, but that's down the line. I
But
think everything has a
what I'm
cost.
saying is, like, when I asked a lot of these players, and then they say, oh, I want to win worlds. We're like, well, what are you doing to win worlds? They're like, well, I practice and I go to scrims. I'm like, is that
Yeah.
what it takes to win worlds? If not,
I mean, if
you know that, like,
for me, like our budget is I think sixth in the league or fifth in the league. If we want to win, you need to do everything the others are doing, and then you need to do everything.
exactly. Yep. Yep.
Um, and so part of my goal as a coach, and the reason I coach is my primary driver in life as a coach is to make the world a better place. So, but there are steps to this because I'm 27. There are many things that I don't have yet: resources, money, time. And I started off with coaching because I can make a positive impact, and it also makes financial sense. So, what can I do to make people around me more happy and more fulfilled? Well, what do players want? They want to win championships. How do we win championships? So we build a kind of system that way, and we have the mindset. So, that's my 5-year project: develop the talent, develop a data-driven ecosystem, develop a talent pipe, not just a talent pipeline, but an alternative revenue source. Find sponsors and partners for the team. Raise revenue by increasing sales through brand acceleration, right, on my end and on players' end. And then eventually, I think after 5 years, I do want to go to Korea. I think if you want to win worlds, being in Korea or China is the best.
Mhm.
So that's kind of what I'm thinking of right now.
I'm sad that you didn't have NA on that list.
I mean, the thing is, like, I had some North American head coach offers,
Yeah.
like on paper,
Yeah.
ready to go.
Yeah.
But for me, if it's not a team that I think I could win everything on, it's a waste of my time.
Well, you need to have them sort of give you the keys to the car, right? Like the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah,
Like you got to be
yeah.
able to run this. Yeah.
I mean, for me, for example, I think C9 is a very, very owner-driven team.
Yes.
That team operates and runs and succeeds because of Jack,
Yes.
that, which
Mostly. Yeah.
is which is bizarre, right? And that's understandable, but it's bizarre.
But to be fair too,
So
Jack he's made some calls that were questionable based on his
yeah,
own opinion, and it's sort of shot him. Like it's sort of had some backlash too with, I'm gonna buy this player, and numerous people were like, I don't know if this is gonna be a good fit, but he's
yeah,
a superstar, so they do it. They do
exactly.
okay, and you just spend a whole bunch of money on a long shot that didn't pan out. I mean,
I mean, the only two teams I'd go to in NA right now is probably C9
mhm,
and Team Liquid.
yeah. I have
I think
never worked directly with Liquid, but they have a much more system in play, like systematic approach in
actually
place. So
FlyQuest too, but I'm not 100% sure.
yeah,
I don't know exactly how they operate.
yep, yep.
I almost got the GM job there. I think the only person ahead of me was Andrew.
Mhm,
Oh yeah, I didn't mention that. Basically, I was going for GM first
mhm,
because I didn't want to work under people anymore,
yeah.
and I think I was second
Well, and Andrew
on
is the
Papa's list.
yeah he is the new GM.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, that's I understand what you mean though with NA. I mean I've dealt with it my whole career in NA, and obviously I'm not on the performance side, but I did work heavily with EG's performance team in the spring of 2021, and guess what? They won their first and only split ever. because we implemented a lot of the outside of the box strategies that you're talking about, which is actually not even outside the box. This is traditional sports psychology that we were trying to use. We were trying to
Yeah.
approach things from a systematic way that makes sense from a traditional sports industry. And it was like, oh, hey, we turned a team from a 50% win rate team in the first 4 weeks, all of a sudden winning everything, and they were
Yeah, I
very,
mean,
very competitive.
I really wish we could. I really wish I could share some of the things that we're doing here.
Yeah. No, I don't want you to
But
give
we
any
are
images.
very,
Well, even
but
from
we
like,
are very,
well,
very performance oriented.
from
Like,
from what you described alone, it already shows a longevity in the process that's sustainable because it's not reliant on star players coming in. It's
so,
relying
so
on getting players that fit into the system and can be trained and can actually develop and improve. You're gonna have a long-term success story with that, right?
something that I learned last year was that performance coaches or people in performance do not mold naturally, and or it's very rare to find like a proactive performance coach. They need to be molded in by the head coach
Mm-hmm.
because that's how it is in traditional sports. They don't want to overstep their boundaries. They need to know how to operate, right? Because they're actually educated. But me being me, and the previous coaches that I've worked with being them, being unaware of the importance of performance or being grown up or growing up and developing their skills as coaches in esports, don't realize this. And then their performance team is always or almost always just jerking off in a corner,
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out what to do. And they're not used effectively. But whereas here, what I learned from Rob, who is an incredible performance coach, or from my mistake, because even though I was not head coach, I feel like I could have been way more aggressive in the way that I like included in the conversations. That now every conversation that involves performance, I bring the performance guys in. Every single conversation. I request them to be in the scrim room watching us train as much as possible while we train. And we connect every single week on Tuesday, 10 a.m. With the performance team, how we can integrate better and what are some systems we can do better. We have a pre-game routine set based on evidence, and we have exercises and things we can do between scrims, in between games, to maximize performance, reduce stress.
I love it.
There are many, so it's a complete integration that I learned from my mistakes. So we are very, very, very performance heavy at the UK.
Yeah. And I think long term that pays dividends because I've always said, it doesn't matter how good of a player you are if you can't reach your own potential.
Yeah.
Right. Like in order to do that, you have to take care of all these other factors outside of the game. Like, and it's always just about maximizing that 1% improvement everywhere, right? And then all of a sudden you have a 50% improvement rate.
Yeah.
Um, no, that's super interesting. I'm glad you're bringing some of that thought process to the region, and hopefully it spreads. Hopefully you set an example, you set a model that the rest of the Brazilian teams can also see and sort of, like iron sharpens iron, right? Like the better you
But I
guys
don't want
get.
that. I don't want that. Thing is,
Well,
they don't know 90% of the things we do.
right, right.
I want to be ahead of the
But
game,
but but
and I want to win everything.
what you do at winning is you push them to get better. However they do it. Maybe they don't use your system. Maybe they develop their own. But it pushes you to get better. I love when I see parity in a league,
I
right?
mean, you do you, bro. But I mean, I want them to not do anything, and I want to win everything. So
For now, right?
yeah.
But how do you get to international competition? You have to have better teams playing you.
Uh,
Like that's been LCS's problem for the longest time. You get the most dominant LCS team of all time, go international and they get shit stomped in groups. It's happened over and over and over. Everyone's like, this C9 team, this TL team might be the best we've ever seen. They go 1-5, like 2-4, getting just murdered by the fourth place LPL team. So I feel like
yeah.
the only way you get there is if multiple teams in the league, let's say the top half of your league, are more competitive than the top three. Like
Yeah.
there has to be some level of parity.
I've never seen a team in NA that was like super dominant. That was coach driven.
No, it's all star player. Like,
So for me, that's already doomed
yes, yeah.
because it's just like that just doesn't happen in the East. Even if the player knows more, if a coach says something, in the East they just say like, "Yes, coach."
Yeah.
It's like mind blowing. No,
Do you see that in Brazil? Like, is the team culture a little bit closer to that, or is it more like NA LEC? LEC? I consider LCS LEC very comparable in team culture.
I think LEC is better.
Well, sure.
I
But
mean, from what I've seen,
yeah.
but I don't know. I think it just depends on the coach. My experiences in this team have been very positive. But the
Okay.
thing is, like, the biggest thing for us is like, well, the biggest thing for me is what I've realized is no matter what a coach does in the end, if the owner of a team wants something else, it's going to get done that way.
Yeah.
So you need to have owners that like buy your vision, and that's what we have at K. That's what makes it really special here because I feel like I can do everything and anything I want.
Mm-hmm.
That I think is important.
Yeah, that's great. That's
So
very
yeah,
rare.
I haven't. It's not like I say do this and they say yes, coach. But I think I've earned it. Playing the most SoloQ games in the team, being here the longest hours, first in, last out.
Yeah.
It's something that I always undervalued because I always tried to like push for mental health. But I learned this from Peter, and I learned this after like splitting with my ex that like you need a level of obsession. And I think high performance athletes and high performance coaches generally have wives that are very supportive of their careers. And I think that's kind of what's changed about me.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, it
and just
depends.
understanding
I
that
mean,
process.
it depends. You
Yeah.
you look at Tom Brady. It's a good example, right? He just split with his wife of 20 years,
Yeah.
and it was because he decided to play football again.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's oftentimes a difficulty in managing outside of game relationships when you are obsessively trying to become the best.
But
Uh,
when he was playing, I'm pretty sure he had a supportive wife.
he
It's just
did, but
like the
because
problem.
it was always understood that this is my job, and eventually I'll stop. It was when he retired and then unretired. She's like, I've had enough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's probably a deal.
yeah,
There's probably like, okay, I'll support you in everything that you do for this
right,
amount of years, and I'll
right.
sacrifice myself.
But yeah,
That's what most top athletes have. They have very like supportive
mhm.
servant wives, not be sexist. Like that's just a term that they use in
But they
in,
have to
in
because
sports
they
psychology.
have to put 99% of their effort into what they're doing, not
Or you can't
towards
be the
yeah,
best.
yeah.
Yeah. Our performance coach Z, he's brilliant as well. The way that he described performance was like being at the top is like you climb a really high mountain, right? And when you're at the very top, you're depleted of oxygen. So you can't stay at the top forever. You need to come back down. So it's all about like just getting back down the mountain and then doing it all over again,
Mhm.
over and over and over and over again. And it's sickening. It's like you need to have some sort of obsession and you need to be a bit mentally ill.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
And
for sure I'm a bit
yeah,
mentally
you,
ill.
you may be able to do it more efficiently, but it's still the same distance. It's still the same amount of
Yeah,
work. It's
exactly,
it's hard. Yeah,
exactly.
it's
It's
always
hard.
yeah, it's always you see it across every sport. It's universally human condition of it's much harder to stay on top than it is to get there. And the
Yeah.
first time you get there, you're like, oh, we did it. But now it's like, well, this is now the real work begins because defending a championship is twice as hard. I mean, you lose a little bit
Yeah.
of that fire from the initial push, and then every other team is trying to hunt you down now.
The,
Um,
like the thing is like people keep saying I'm LEC champion, LEC champion, LEC champ, right? And you say that too, but the thing is like that trophy is trash for me. For me, it's like nothing because I don't think I did a good job that year.
hmm,
I think I don't think that team would have won or got anywhere near winning without me. But I think what I could have done, what I should have done, and how much positive impact I could have had on everyone there versus what I ended up doing, that year was a complete failure to me. It's garbage for me.
hmm.
So for example, I didn't even bring my trophy when I came. I left it at home with my ex-girlfriend. It doesn't mean anything. And when you want to go for a trophy for me, it's like you need to want to go for it over and over again. You need to like do it again and again and again and again. It really is some sort of illness, I think. I don't know. If I go to like therapy, I'll probably have 100 different problems with me. But
I mean, I think
uh,
most hyper competitive people have that too.
yeah,
When I was in college, I won a paintball championship after 2 years of getting second place. We won on the third year, and it was the greatest feeling ever. The year after that, we made it to finals and lost, and I immediately didn't care about the win anymore. I was so over it.
yeah.
I was immediately like, I can't believe we just lost. You
But
know,
it's
you could,
almost it's almost the point of like if you achieve maximal high performance
yeah.
or like you have a really good mindset in performance, they say that when you win, you feel nothing. And if you actually watch,
I mean, relief maybe. You feel like relief. That's about it. Like,
well,
cause,
not even. You're so focused on the process,
yeah.
and then you don't realize you've won something. So, for example, like if you can go back and watch the LEC finals when I win,
Yeah.
sometime in your time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're curious about this. And when we won, this is the first time Rogue had won anything in like its 6-year history. It was trying to win for like 6 years straight.
Yep.
They failed every finals. Then I came in and we won, right? That's what happened. Then all the coaches and players are like screaming and they're running out, and I'm like just walking. And I remember when I was at the end, I was just clapping for the players and I felt nothing.
Hmm.
And I smiled for the camera. Then I didn't realize I didn't absorb. Everyone else went partying and I just went back to my hotel room. And I didn't feel like I'd won. Partly because I'd done a poor job in my eyes, but also like because I was so focused on what I needed to do and what we needed to do as a team to win. And then after we'd won everything, 3 days later, I was like, holy shit, I'm European champion. In 3 years.
Why?
I
Why do
went
you?
from Oceania to European champion.
Why do you specifically think you didn't do well enough?
Just because I was still so immature. I had a relationship that recently ended. Like basically my fiance, you could say, we're very close to getting married and whatnot. And I had other priorities, and that was one big part of my failure. I wasn't able to prioritize the things that my players needed as much as I could have. And second, I think that specifically around Trimby, I mean, this is the way that I dealt with the Trimby situation was what I felt like the team needed at the time. And it was, I think, what led to us winning eventually.
Mm-hmm.
But it was not the best way that I could have done it. And I think I could have built him up more. And I think I could have built every player in that team up. Like a big part of my failure as a coach historically, and this includes in my first split at Team Heretics, is as a coach, you need to build your players up. You don't build your players down. And it's something I just didn't realize because the way that I grew up was so fucking toxic. And the way that I lived my life was like a battlefield. It was so fucking toxic, right? Because I grew up in an abusive household full of alcohol, drugs, moved out at 17, worked like a dog, and every time it was like, you're trash and you work harder and you make things work. That's how I lived my life for 10 years now, right? And I still have that all the time when I talk to myself, like when I think about how to plan my day. And so that's kind of a way that reflected into my coaching style. But what I learned from Rob and Peter Dunn, was shit, I could have built these players up, made them more confident, feel happy, feel fulfilled, flourish, and succeed and achieve their dreams and continue on to succeed. But instead, I just made it work in the short term. That's why I hate being compared to Mourinho as well. Because everyone compares my personality to Mourinho. It's very similar. And that was my big shift that I had going into summer split of Heretics 2023, which made us come top 4. And that was my big shift coming to Keyd, which was, I think, another elevated like experience for me because I went from being in a committed relationship to single, which made me have even more resources to think about how to be a better coach. That's really why I think I failed. And I didn't learn shit about the game, to be honest with you, at Heretics, but I did learn a lot about people from Peter, and how to build teams and like what each personality needs.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I felt like I failed at Rogue.
That makes sense. I mean, you didn't reach the expectations you had for yourself, not so much the outward team expectations of winning a trophy.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's tough. And yeah, Peter's a great people person as a coach. You know, I had a lot of talks with him at EG, just in terms of how he knows how to manage different
Yeah, I mean,
personality
Peter
types.
is a legend for a reason.
Yeah.
I don't think. I mean, everyone has their weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not here to talk about Peter's weaknesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think he struggles with some personality, but he's brilliant, and he has a very high EQ, and you know, he deserves all the fame that he's gotten throughout the years. And I think that was the difference. Like, I don't feel like I went to be honest with you, I don't feel like I went to Heretics and I was like, whoa, this guy's insane at game knowledge. It wasn't like that at all. It was actually,
Right.
I felt like I actually knew a lot of things that he didn't know, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like the amount I failed as a coach on the people side was so massive that the more and more I think about 2022 and winter of 2023, the more I realized how young I was as a coach. And if you think about it, my career started from living a really toxic, self-punishment style kind of lifestyle, working multiple jobs before esports, just working like a dog. In my mind, it's all about living a better life. My dream has always been, for example, like having a family and like making them live life and experience things that I didn't, and not experience the things that I have to live, right? So I had this like really toxic mindset of like, you got to work hard, you got to work hard, you got to do this, you got to do this. And then I went from that straight into coaching in the worst fucking region in the world, literally Oceania, the worst fucking region. And then I went from Oceania to like LFL to a team that was on fire, literally, because they fired their coach, they fired a shit ton of people, they like moved people around and they were like, oh, we need a coach to fix this. Boom. That's how I got promoted every year. Same for Rogue. They just threw me in the LEC team.
Mm-hmm.
And I went from toxic to giga toxic in Oceania to winning championship in 3 years. So there's no way I could have done a good job. Now that I think about it. And I think this is, if there are any coaches watching, well, I don't know if you'll upload this to YouTube or Twitter or whatever.
Yeah, well,
you should, but
yeah.
But what I really realized was like, I think most coaches should hear my words and like really try rethink why they're coaching, because it's a privilege and it's also a responsibility, right? And I think that's what we're doing differently at Vivo Keyd. And yeah, hopefully that leads to some championships.
Yeah, I don't think you should regret any of the experiences you've had though, because that's what builds you into the coach you are today, right?
I don't.
Yeah.
No, I don't
You
regret
absolutely
any
don't.
decision I made, because I one thing that I'm really proud of in my life is I don't look back at my life and regret anything that I did.
Right.
I think that I should have done better, and I tell myself that I failed as a coach. But in the moment, I know that I tried my absolute best.
And now
Every decision.
Yeah. And now every decision after, you have a basis to form that on. You know for sure this is not the way I want to do things. And I don't think if you hadn't had those experiences, if you hadn't done that, you wouldn't know. Right now you'd sort of be lost, right? This is reinforcement for your current coaching philosophy, which is really important. I think a lot of people need to take into account that failures are what teach you things, not success. And the
Yeah,
fact that
exactly.
you frame that championship as a failure, not a success, you're still learning from it.
Yeah.
Where if you just looked
Like
at it as like, hey, everything I did was great, we won a championship, you didn't learn anything. You would have
yeah.
probably done the same thing again at your next team, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
was not
that's it's really really powerful stuff. And that's sort of a general rule in life is, constantly look at yourself as not positive, negative failures, successes, but successes and failures as lessons. What am I learning from this, and what am I going to take away from this? Awesome. Well, yeah, we've gone a little bit over an hour, so I really appreciate you taking time. Do you have anything else that you want to, chat about with the chat, or anything you just want to talk about the season upcoming?
No, not really. I mean, everything's just a process.
Yeah.
I really believe in my boys. We're working super hard. So let's just see where it goes. It is a long-term project, but I really believe that we can win.
I'm heavily
And
invested in your system too, and how this goes. So
yeah,
I'm definitely going to be trying to watch some more CBLoL games.
yeah, there are some things that maybe you notice that we do differently, even in like draft, but maybe you don't notice it. We'll see.
All right. Well,
We'll
thank you
see.
so much, Coach. Thank you
Talk
for
about
taking
it someday.
time. Yeah. Well, we'll definitely have to do a recap at some point when you make Worlds, right? Uh,
Yeah.
all right. Yeah. Thank you guys.
Awesome.
Yeah. Have a good night, and I will see you
Thanks,
soon.
Jordan.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Thanks.